The macro competition for May 2025 is over and the results are in. Hello everybody. 2 nights ago we judged the second stereo macro photo competition. It was May 2025's regular macro competition with a twist. This was the second time we've done a macro photography competition in the art of stereo imaging. The first time was about 2 years ago, and for that one we had a guest judge. We had Rik Littlefield, who came and helped us figure out all the nuances of stereo macro photography, and it was a wonderful experience. The resulting video was a masterclass in stereo photography, and a lot of people have since seen it. When I decided it was time to do another stereo macro competition, obviously the first person I went to was Rik to ask if he would do it again, and he very graciously agreed to do so. So 2 nights ago, Rik and I judged this competition, every entry from start to finish. I say Rik and I mean Rik judged the competition. I was there. I'm not sure why I was there, honestly, but I had a tremendous time. It was great fun. I learned a lot, and we were at it until 11:45 at night. That's very late in the evening for an old man like me. So by the time we were finished, there's no way I could record the introduction, and I went to bed. Then I forgot to do it yesterday, so I'm doing it today. So we're going to go back in time 2 days, and we're going to pretend that it's the same day. And the next thing I'm going to do is introduce you to our guest judge. And so, with no further ado, join me in welcoming the inventor of synthetic stereo, the brain behind the best focus stacking program on Earth, Zerene Stacker, and the force behind photomacrography.net, one of the best resources for macro photographers in the world. Rik Littlefield, our guest judge for the May contest. Rik, welcome.
Alan, thank you for inviting me to help with this contest of yours.
Like clockwork.
Every 2 years. We'll see how we go from here.
Right.
So before I begin, let me review what it is that I'm looking for in stereo images.
Okay.
Of course, they are photos, and so they should be attractive, they should be interesting, but they're stereo, and I have a special interest in stereo, and that is structure. The stereo images let me see things in 3D that sometimes I simply cannot see in 2D. They reveal structure that I cannot figure out, and that's the key thing for me.
Okay.
An image should be great to look at, but if I do not feel a strong sense of loss when I drop back to mono, then it's not as good. The best stereo images are the ones that I love to look at in stereo. And when I go mono, I look at it and wonder why I'm spending my time with it.
Got it. Okay. I think I passed that to the folks that were going to be submitting images early this month and made sure that they understood that's the primary concern. So I'll be interested to see how they did. Well, I know how they did because I looked at the pictures. They're lovely. But yeah.
There are lovely images. And
tell folks how we split up the judging responsibilities in this, because it was an interesting formula you used.
Oh, you mean the way I went through the images?
No, the way you split up the responsibility for picking the winners between you and me.
Oh, you had no responsibilities whatsoever.
That's it.
You told me at the beginning, Alan, that I was supposed to make the decisions, and that we would have a good discussion about them. And so,
I thought, what is the point of having a leading world expert come look at the stereo images and then me say anything about them? So
I try to be a very good boy. I take direction well. If somebody tells me I'm supposed to do X, then I'll probably try to do X.
There you go.
Sometimes I fail, but I'll give it my best shot. And so here we are, and yeah, I've already put the images in an order.
Okay. Tell us about that if you can.
So that order is as follows. Mostly random. Okay. No, not really. We had 25 submissions, of which 2 turned out to not actually be stereos at all. So I didn't include those in tonight's affair.
Okay.
Of the remaining 23 that were stereos, I went through all 23 and made a quick first cut between the top half and the others.
Okay.
And then for those in the top half, I went through and did division of those into the top 5 and
Okay.
the other 7.
All right.
And so what we're going to do tonight is to begin with the first half in random order, and I mean literally random. I made an Excel spreadsheet. There's a function in there that computes a random number, and I sorted by it.
Okay.
It's not alphabetical. It's not, in order of how much I liked it. It's just the number that Excel assigned at the time it executed the random function.
Okay. Fair enough. That sounds like
After,
exactly what I do for random numbers. Not really.
yes, it's a very valuable function. I especially like it for accounting reports, but we won't talk about that in any more detail
Okay.
since this is being recorded.
It is for
uh,
posterity.
so we'll go through those first half,
Okay.
and then we will look at the honorable mentions again in random order,
Okay.
and then we will look at the top 5 in order from number 5 to number 1. So
I am intrigued. Shall we begin?
we shall begin.
All
So
right.
let me do the obligatory Zoom screen share here.
Let me grab my magic spectacles while you're doing that. All right.
Okay, so if I have done this properly, you now see a screen that is substantially black.
Yes.
And what that is showing is a copy of my stereo viewer, which I added some extensions to facilitate tonight's judging.
Okay.
And I'm going to pop up in that window this image. This is titled Totally Tubular by Julie Botts. And when I looked at this image, I had absolutely no idea what the object is, but it's very well photographed. In terms of stereo, it appears to be true stereo as opposed to synthetic stereo. And for
How do you
true
know that,
stereo,
Rick?
well, there are some clues. One strong clue in this case is if we go to the background, it appears that the background is slightly different focus in the 2 images. It's very sharp here,
Oh, yeah.
and in the other image, it's not quite so sharp. There are some other distinctions way over on one side.
And in a synthetic, it would have been basically the same photograph, just
Yes, it would have been the
reinterpreted.
same photograph in 2 separate places. We've got a couple of bright spots here that appear also over
Mm-hmm.
here. Those appear to be maybe something like hot pixels, and they would not be in different positions if we would done synthetic stereo.
Right.
We've got a couple of other bright spots here and a bright spot there that are probably specular reflections. Again, they appear in one but not in the other. So the presence of these characteristics, plus the absence of any characteristics that I would normally associate with synthetic stereo, are what point me to saying this is true stereo.
All right.
Synthetic stereo has some characteristic artifacts. We'll talk about them later. A phenomenon called cardboarding, for example, which sometimes I call layer separation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also frequently a horizontal streaking effect in a few places, things like that, asymmetric halos. At any rate, we have this stereo, which is very nice. Again, the far back appears not to be quite focused, and there are those mismatching spots. It's a beautiful image. I find it amusing because I had no idea what this thing was, so I pointed it to ChatGPT. ChatGPT said, "Oh, well, that's looks like the inside of a vacuum tube," and I said, no, these these things that look like pins, they're actually tubes." And does that change its opinion? And ChatGPT said, "Oh, well, if those aren't actually pins, then this must be either the inside of a rocket engine or some fancy laboratory equipment like a gas chromatograph. Yeah, turns out it's actually a vacuum tube, I'm told. And so in that case, I have to change my judgment from being I have no idea what this thing is to being I have no idea how this is that thing
Yeah.
because it doesn't look like any vacuum tube I ever saw. But that's great. I love images that make me wonder about stuff.
Yeah.
One characteristic I do notice about this image is that uh, the basic setup of the image, the lighting, the perspective, all of that is so good that I understand the structure without having to have the stereo.
Hmm.
And so when I go stereo and then drop back to mono, I don't feel any sense of loss with this one. So that's why this is in the first half.
Okay. I get that. You don't feel there's some information in that piece of metal on the front right that's raised up that looks like a handle.
Are we
Yeah,
talking about this one?
yeah, you don't get anything fresh from that in stereo. I thought I did. It looked more
I get a little. I get a little, but really not much.
okay. Fair enough. I'd love to see what the rest of this thing looks like.
The rest of the set, oh, the rest of the subject.
Rest of the tube to see exactly where
Yeah,
this is.
yeah. This thing is completely and utterly new to me. By the way, anybody listening to this, if you submitted images and I get anything wrong, or I or there's something you know about it that you think I would like to know, feel free to email me support@zerenesystems.com, and I would love to hear from you.
Great.
Okay, shall we move on?
I think we should. Well done, Julie.
Well done, Julie.
Really nice picture.
Next, we have to us a subject called Hooded Beetle. This is by Bill Wheeler. And this is interesting to me because this beetle has a morphology that I'm not used to. It really does appear to have part of its um, part of its prothorax that comes out completely over its head, a
Hmm.
structure that I'm not used to. And that is something that I can see in the stereo, but I would not expect it to be there based on the mono. So that's a good thing. From a standpoint of stereo, this one has some opportunities for improvement, and I'm not quite sure where things went awry. There's some oddness here with transparent foreground and some strange color shifts from one image to another that I just don't know the cause of. Stepping out, if you break stereo and look at this just in mono as two separate images, you can see that this image over here on the right is much, much darker than the
Hmm.
corresponding image over there. That's not a behavior that I would expect from any synthetic imaging, from any stereo imaging process, either synthetic or true stereo. And in combination with a similar effect down here in this region versus its mate, which is much, much
Hmm.
brighter, I'm wondering if this was retouched in some way, maybe an attempt to reduce halos. Don't know, but it doesn't feel like something that happened during the photography process or the normal processing of synthetic stereo. Um, I
Yeah, I
cannot
believe
tell.
Bill may have said that actually at some point that he had
Ah,
done a bit of retouching
okay.
or post-processing.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that this is in fact synthetic stereo because if we zoom in on an eye, you'll notice a very strange layering effect. The
Hmm.
front of the eye ends in a sharp line right there, and the rest of the eye is depressed behind that.
Right.
That is a very typical behavior for synthetic stereo, where the stacking software ends up picking some of the pixels from one frame and some of the pixels from an adjacent frame. In the physical world, there's a continuous gradation between those, but in the synthetic stereo world, they have different shifts, so it produces a hard edge.
How could you
Sometimes,
avoid that being so apparent in the photograph?
really, the only way to avoid that is to use finer focus steps,
Okay.
just more of them and smaller, and makes the stair stepping less extreme. The
Got it.
other thing is, I mean, let's be real. If you're looking at this scale, you won't ever see anything like that. The time you see that sort of artifact is when you zoom way in.
Right, right.
So we'll see some later where indeed I have to zoom way, way in to see that sort of thing.
Fair enough.
Okay, so hooded beetle. Bill, nice
Well
job.
done, Bill. In random position, the third.
In random position, the third. I'm glad you're keeping track of
I am.
the
I've got to
number of
do
these things.
something worthwhile here. Oh, that's
Okay.
lovely.
It is very lovely. I'm looking at it right now in mono, so it's just three images side by side by side, and it looks beautiful. And I have the highest of hopes in locking this thing up as stereo. But as soon as I lock it up in stereo, the front of the forehead looks very weird. It has this deep groove in
What
it.
is that?
It is apparently at this moment a bit of morphology that I have never ever seen in a wasp. Let me do the swap sides trick in the viewer. Here we are, swapping sides. Now, if you drop back to mono, what you'll see is that most of the face is rocking left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. But the bases of the antennae and the area between them are staying in exactly the same spot.
Yeah, what in the world is going on here? That's very disconcerting to.
Yes, I have never seen this particular problem before. I can only guess that this is some sort of a retouching error. I considered the possibility that it could be done by having images out of order in the stack, but then I would expect there to be other sorts of artifacts resulting from that error, and
What
I
if
don't see those.
what if an antenna was clone stamped into all three photographs? Would it give that same fixed because they don't move at all, do they?
Nope, they do not move at all. The center of the face and part, but not all, of the antennae stay in exactly the same place. So yeah, there's been some cloning going on, and I can't say exactly what sort of cloning.
Whose picture is this? Did you say?
Oh, sorry, I did not say. This is titled My Face When You Get Too Close by, by Rashid Al-Samaidi.
Okay, excellent.
A lovely image, but in this particular case, far better in mono than in stereo.
Okay. I do love the way he treats the colors. I mean, he gets the lighting just perfect for these
In
close-ups.
my entire life, I've never taken a photo that looks this good.
There you go.
Very nice.
Don't believe that for a second, but
Okay,
very
and
nice.
next up, we have what is titled Cyclamen Flower Center by Gerald Holler. And I'm very glad that the subject is described in the title because I would otherwise have no idea what this is. I am not familiar with cyclamen flowers. I can see from the imagery when I lock it up in stereo that, oh, yeah, this center portion, the yellows especially, and this yellow thing in the middle, those stick way forward.
Hmm.
The part of the image that is a little bit blurred, all this stuff around the edge, that is stereoscopically flat. And that is another one of those clues that this is a synthetic stereo. Um, all of this stuff around the edge, that all comes from one background frame and it's the same frame in both left and right views. So yeah, flat.
How would you
But
describe the artifact around that anther at the bottom of the picture?
yeah, that attracted my attention as well. It is a type of artifact that I have not seen in exactly this form before. I think what that is just a classic Pmax halo for a bright subject in front of a dark background. You know, when you look at the dark background, when that bright foreground is severely out of focus,
Mhm.
it's still contributing a lot of light out in these areas.
True.
And so that part does not surprise me. The part that is a little weird is when I lock it up in stereo, that halo seems to be occupying its own area in 3D space.
Yeah, behind the answer.
Yeah, behind the answer, but definitely in front of the background.
Yep.
So that certainly attracted my attention. Looking in more detail at this image, I was also distracted by the fact that right here in the center, it looks like it never made fully in focus. It looks like the stack started just a
Yeah.
little bit late. So this is flat and fuzzy.
Yep. Lovely detail in the cells, in the red area there at the base.
This is the part that, of this image that I like the best.
Yep.
Fly in and look at this stuff.
Yep.
It's the sort
Very
of thing
cool.
that if I had the flower under a stereo microscope, I would crank up the zoom level. What can I see? Detail, and there is just a gob of really nice, crisp detail in this thing.
Hmm.
Good colors, a lot of fun to poke around in here.
Very different sense of its three dimensionality with the stereo though. It just didn't look anything like this
Oh,
towering.
wow. So as you spoke about that, I just now dropped back to mono, and I'm looking at something that makes no sense at all
Mhm.
in terms of a 3D structure. It's just it's an array of colors.
Yeah, it's kind of flat and
Okay, and then I looked it up again, and yep, it's 3D. I understand. So yeah, for this one, definite sense of loss when I dropped from stereo back to mono. So kudos for that.
are they the petals, those sword-like pale orange projections?
I have no
Five
idea.
of them. I've never seen this. It's
I
hard for me to tell whether those are actually structures or just gaps between the petals or whatever the purple things are. You see what I'm saying? In
so there's
mono,
a
they seem to be coming up out of the flower.
right, right, but in stereo, we can see that the red stuff here is in the
Oh gosh, they're
foreground,
dropping down inside. So you really
and
see
then
something different with this.
yep, the yellow stuff is dropping down, and there appears to be, this dark section is way back.
Hmm.
But yeah, this appears to be a little bit, I want to say subsurface, but we're seeing it clearly. It's not as far back as the red stuff. And then whatever this thing is, I don't know, that looks like it's even farther back.
It does. It does. Looks like a hole rather than the tip of a structure. The first time I saw it, it looked like the tip of a leaf or something that was sticking up out of the
I
picture.
agree. And even at this scale, even the stereo version suggests to me that yeah, that's sticking up. But what's happening is it's now too small to show any stereo disparity.
Hmm.
And so I'm not actually getting any stereo cues. All I'm getting is shape from shading. And shape from shading says that ought to be something that's sticking up.
Right, right, exactly. And that must
It's
have been the cue I was looking at too. But
yeah,
you don't need to see the stereo when you get in closer, though. It's obviously a hole.
yeah, good point.
Very interesting. But
As I now see breaking stereo when we're in this close.
that's probably a more um, surprising discovery in this picture than anything else to me. The certainty that those things were structures coming out of the picture at me, only to find out they're the opposite. What did you say this flower was?
Cyclamen, Cyclamen.
Looks like it would smell pretty bad for some reason.
The stinking flower of death.
Yeah, of
Yeah, I
course.
have no idea.
Well, very
But
nice. And this was from Rashad Al Samati.
no, this was
Oh,
from Gerald Haller.
Gerald Holler. Yeah. Well done, Gerald.
S-
Very interesting picture.
So then next up, we have a name that I can hardly pronounce. Dryopterus erythrosauria unfurling failure by Nick Parker. I can pronounce that part.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
wondering why you had a problem with the pronunciation of that.
so I do not know what the phrase unfurling failure means in this case. I understand this is probably a fern
Mm.
unfurling, but I don't
Yeah.
see the failure of either the unfurling or the stereo. The image appears fine to me.
Yeah, Nick. I talked to him about this on Saturday, and the failure was it was supposed to unfurl, and he was going to shoot the progress of the thing unfurling, but instead it developed leaves, but never unfurled, and it looks like it needs a haircut too.
Oh, how
So,
interesting.
yeah, it was a failure to complete the maturation process, and within a day or so, it was rotten. So he was
So,
concerned about that light piece of material in the middle, but let me not stamp on your comments here. I looked at this several times since then.
okay. Well, I have a note here that says, I don't know how it was shot. The background has a flatness that suggests synthetic, but I don't see any of the usual artifacts like smearing or cardboarding. Um, so now I'm wondering, from what you tell me, if this was perhaps two images in the sequence that where the subject just sort of spontaneously rotated between captures, and we're seeing a serendipitous stereo assembly from what was originally a time sequence. Could that?
Mm, it could have been. I don't think so. I think that Nick was well, no, I can't speak for him. I'll find out though.
It's very puzzling to me. I get sort of a mix of impressions. Some of this looks like it was made with true stereo, like the fact that we can zoom in here and not see any trace of cardboarding, any trace of smearing. Uh, maybe maybe it's just finely spaced with DMAP, which doesn't show the smearing.
Is that a real
Oh,
hole there in the middle of the bottom part of the screen? Are we seeing inside the
here or
pretty much dead center of that fused up stereo? It looks like you're looking down through a hole in the leaves, quite a
okay,
distance down.
so right here or down here.
Yes, yes, I'm sorry. I was looking at the parallels. But yes, it was the first place you pointed. That looks like a window into a cavern that you wouldn't think would be there.
Yes, I agree. It looks like that. It looks so compellingly like that that I'm going to say, yeah, we're looking into a cavern. We're not seeing much detail back there, but
Right, right.
that's my guess. We've got a crisply defined. I'll try to move my cursor over to the middle so it shows up in your view as well. Um, we have a crisply defined edge of a, a leaf, a leaflet, whatever these things are called. I forget the name.
Hmm. A
Um,
bract.
a bract. Okay, well, whatever this is, it's a continuous membrane of green cells, and then it has a hard edge with some brown fibers coming off it, and then it's really, really easy to believe that those things are physical. They're
Hmm.
certainly visually behind it, and I can't think how else that appearance could have been produced.
So you think this is real stereo rather
I,
than
I think it's true stereo,
true
yes.
stereo?
Two separate images from different viewpoints. If it's not, then I would love to know the details of how it was shot so as to make the synthetic work out so well.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask Nick to clarify that. There was a big question about what to do with that patch of dried leaf, I guess, or root right there.
This thing that I'm hovering my cursor over,
Yep, yep. When I saw the picture, he was in the process of dodging and burning in that area to try to de-emphasize the piece.
okay, just to darken it a little bit while still leaving it there.
Yep.
Oh, that's one of those aesthetics things that I'm really not qualified to speak to. I can say from a standpoint of stereo technology that it's going to be very difficult to make that look right because you have to do exactly the same thing or at least exactly consistent things to both left and right eye views, and that's very difficult to pull
Yeah,
off.
that's what I said. And a couple of interesting comments were made in Afterstack about that, about actually viewing it in stereo as you did the retouching, which was an interesting.
Yes, that is a thought that I have had numerous times. It is one of the features that is on the infamous to be considered for future implementation. Yeah, I know it's a long list and progress is very slow. Um, no predictions.
Okay, well, I love this. I think it's a interesting picture. Right enough.
Yeah, I will say that when I need to retouch in stereo in Photoshop, I do sometimes open two windows on the same image, align
Hmm.
them side by side, and fuse it up while cloning. So yeah, I definitely do that, but not in Zerene Stack or in Photoshop.
Hmm. Oh yeah, right, exactly. I used to do a lot more of it than I do now.
It's very, very difficult to
I
fix.
ruined so many pictures doing that, and it turns out they look pretty good without it. So,
Ironically, we will see an example of that in the very next image, and I emphasize these are in random order. So this is titled Verbena by Stuart Turley. A lovely arrangement of flowers, beautiful colors, uh, very sharp. Um, I'm quite confident that this is true stereo.
oh
In
wow,
part, yeah, you got that?
yeah, 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 wow. Are these big flowers, Rick? I'm sorry to interrupt. Was it
I actually do not know how big these flowers are.
okay? It's very striking.
Typical of Stewart's work, the stereo is essentially flawless. Notice that the background continues to remain in 3D.
Hmm.
That's a strong indicator that it's true stereo, even if I did not know that that's what Stewart does for the most part. And while we're here, do you see a blob right there? Just kind of a funny,
I do.
darkened
A
area
dark,
that's
angular looking
yes. And
wedge.
if you break stereo and look at the screen in mono, so it's three
I
images,
see it on the left, but not on the right.
but not in the center.
Right.
It's on the left over here. It's on the right, which of
Hmm.
course is another copy of the same image, but it's not here in the middle.
No.
What is that and how did it get there? I have absolutely no idea. There's a similar thing here, but reversed in the sense that this one appears in the center image and not in the two outer images. Again, I have no idea how that got there. I did, for my own education, explore the possibility of fixing that by cloning from the clean side, in this case, the right image,
Hmm.
into the one with the blob, the center image. And so I fired up Photoshop and I pulled the images in and I cloned from this area to this one while locking it up in stereo.
Hmm.
And I got a perfect edit, which I was very pleased about. And so then I said, well, that worked really well. Let's try the other one now. And so I moved over here and I tried the same trick, cloning from the center here onto the right hand image. And I simply could not make it work. Every time I tried, I ended up with a little blot of metal that was either pulled forward or pushed back.
You
I
know,
could not manage to complete the edit while keeping proper disparity.
Rick, I think I do see a remnant of the same shape in the. In fact, I do see it in the middle image right there, and I think what we're seeing is the petal behind it. I think that's a dark part of the where it gets really dark at the in that vein right behind it is just showing up as a kind of like a shadow on the translucent part of the petal,
Hmm.
which would not surprise me if the slight shift would change the contours of the petal and you'd no longer be able to see through it if there were, because it's very wrinkled, isn't it?
It is. Uh,
That's what it feels like I'm looking at anyway.
well, I certainly have no solid explanation, so yeah, that could be. Um, the thing that makes me a little concerned about that particular explanation is that there are just these two instances,
hmm
just the one I pointed out earlier, and that one, and it just sort of feels to me like if what you described as happening would be happening in a lot of other places too, and yet every place else the match between left and right eye images is essentially perfect.
Yeah, it is strange.
So I'm not getting any sense of transparency of these petals.
No, it was just a thought because it does look so incongruous. I need to ask Stuart what it was.
Yeah, I mean at this scale I can still see the blobs. There's one and there's the other,
hmm
but they're not quite so distracting. They're
Yeah.
small enough that they look like maybe dirt or dust on my screen, which frequently introduces such effects.
Well,
Maybe I should make a note to clean my screen more
yeah,
often.
that would do it. Lovely picture though.
It
Nice one,
is it is
Stuart.
a lovely picture. This is one of these pictures that suffers a little bit from being really good as a mono.
hmm
Um, and because it's a familiar subject, I can lock it up in stereo and I get a strong sense of presence, like I'm
Yeah,
actually there looking into the flowers. But when I break stereo and go mono,
you still
all I
kind of see it.
yeah, all I lose is a sense of presence.
Yeah,
It's not like I'm losing any ability to understand what I'm looking at.
right, right. Good example then of what you're looking for.
Exactly.
Oh,
Okay then. So moving on.
yes, sir.
Christmas Cactus by Larry Strunk. This one is interesting. I'm displaying it here in triptych form. It was submitted in triptych form, but it had a very strange layout. Instead of being a left, right, left, it was left, left, right. So the the two images on the right hand side of the screen, on the right hand side of the triptych as originally submitted, made sense as a parallel pair. The two left images were stereoscopically flat. Um, this took me aback for a moment when I first fused it up, but then I said, "Oh well, no problem," and I just popped into Photoshop and eliminated the spare left image and wrote a new copy as just a left-right pair, and that's what we're seeing now is a left-right pair re-rendered by the viewer as a left-right-left
Okay.
triptych. So this, of course, is a beautiful flower. Uh, Even at this scale, there's something odd happening around the middle.
Yep, there is that
There are some,
petal is not in the right place, or that.
yeah, it just doesn't feel comfortable. And when I zoom in farther, it really seriously does not feel comfortable. And if I break stereo, go to mono, and I hit swap sides a couple of times, oh, yeah, I see what's happening. The petals up here are
Not shifting.
drooping a little bit. They're shifting position. I assume it's a droop. It's the way gravity and time usually work. But in any event, yeah, there's some vertical shift of those flower structures, and also a little bit of vertical shift of the flower structures down here as well. See, for example, on the very right-hand side of the screen, this section is moved farther left than it's made over there.
So what
So,
does that tell you?
well, my guess is the flower wilted a little. Uh, this looks like true stereo. I'm going to swap back. Okay, so now we're in proper orientation for normal stereo viewing, and it it looks fine. It looks great as we zoom in. except for places where there's some stereo disparity caused by vertical shifts. And the only thing I can imagine, like I say, is cha-cha stacks, one stack taken from the right, one stack taken from the left, but long enough that the flower was able to shift a little bit between them. It's a
Okay.
common problem when shooting fresh flowers.
How can you tell that that was the problem and not an injudicious attempt at retouching one of those? I guess that's the stamen in the middle, the purpley thing.
When I see what I think is bad retouching, I usually see kind of hard edges. Everything's fine up until an edge when it isn't.
Hmm.
And in this particular case, I'm not seeing that. What I'm seeing is structures that have physical edges that don't match up from one
Hmm.
image to another.
Yeah.
Putting it another way, if I tried to construct this by myself by retouching, I would not be able to. But I certainly would be able to by letting a flower wilt.
Yeah. I mean, I used not to be able to see that kind of thing, but it's not even subtle. It hurts to look at it a little bit, trying to resolve what's in front of what. Lovely picture though.
It is very pretty. It is unfortunately more comfortable to look at in mono than it is in stereo.
And if
So
it's a Christmas cactus, this is a tiny little plant too, right?
yes, this is pretty small.
So
We're not probably down into the 1-to-1 range, but we might be at 1-to-2, 1-to-3.
okay.
At least if it's like the Christmas cactuses that I'm familiar with.
All mine died, so I never did see a flower on them.
Okay then. So moving
Nice one,
on.
Larry.
This one, Larry, yes.
Ah,
Moving on, we have
a jewel beetle.
what is visually a jewel beetle and is titled Stolen Car by
It's not a
Antonin
car.
Bur by Stolen Car. I'm trying to read it what I see written by Antonin Burkhardt. Yeah. So this is very attractive and very, very well done. Um, we can zoom in, we can see lots of interesting detail. I love the rendering of these lower spines and this little
Yeah,
chunk of white whatever it is hanging off the leg.
antenna.
I'm sorry, yes, clearly an antenna.
It's
My mind was wandering until forgot to tell my tongue to do the right word.
that's a lot of detail. A
It
lot.
is it is an enormous amount of detail.
I had never
Yes.
noticed that depression in the middle of their forehead either. That's a new thing.
This thing here.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's really there. Um,
it's got pollen in it. Maybe pollen or bacteria or something.
I don't think we have a magnification that we could see bacteria, but we can certainly see pollen. We're also at a level where we can see that this is um, probably not true stereo because, for example, this chunk of pollen down there is stereoscopically flat.
That looks like something different though.
Could be,
Very
but we
interesting.
have other indications.
See the details in those pits. They are pits, right? I always seem to get the direction of these things wrong. Are they
I
bumps
believe
or
I
pits?
believe those are pits.
Good.
So here I am back on the eye, and we're now in an area where I think there'll be no
Oh,
question
what is
that
that weirdness?
well, this is the edge of one source frame, and this is the edge of another source frame that was shifted differently, and this is the edge of another source frame that was shifted differently. And I mean, this is cardboarding. This is layer separation.
Wow, I've never seen it quite that dramatically before.
We're zoomed in way, way far. Let's go back out.
Yeah, it just disappears.
Yeah, in any reasonable presentation, you would never see anything like that. I think this is uh, this is perfectly well done. It's just an inevitable feature of synthetic stereo that if you are able to zoom in far enough, you will see that stair stepping on smooth structures.
It's almost like a Where's Waldo puzzle. It just it's not there, and then suddenly it is. And
Yeah, it can go ahead.
this is something that you would resolve with shorter step lengths.
That's the only way I know to attack it, but I would not even attempt to attack it for this image. That would be crazy. If I wanted to see that area at a magnification equivalent to that level of zoom, then I would reshoot that area at higher optical magnification,
Right.
and that would give me a shallower total stack depth. I would probably be a wider aperture, so I would naturally have a smaller focus step, and it would just all take care of itself.
Make a comment about the overall composition, if you would. I I find it a little unsettling.
Composition is one of those things that I'm not personally very sensitive to. Let me click the button to put it back to its original layout. And we can't quite see how big the frame is because we're seeing a black background in the image against a black background for the viewer panel. Um,
Right,
can
right.
you explain what it is about the composition that you find a little disturbing?
Um, the balance, the right antenna appears to be coming out more directly to the front, and the right fore appendage is kind of lost in the thorax back there. It just doesn't look comfortable, and the way it's coming in from the side of the image doesn't have a pleasing balance to it, and I think it costs in the stereo viewing of it. It makes it, as you get to the body there, it makes it less interesting. It seems like maybe bringing it around and having an out of focus body back there would give it more balance, but what do I know?
Ah, yes, but notice that this upper right portion of the body is already a little bit out of focus.
Yep, yep,
There is a problem with focus stacks in general that at high magnification with lots and lots of frames, you don't get background smoothly blurring out. You get sort of an end of the world effect
yep.
where
So
everything is
true.
perfectly sharp right up to the point that you don't have any more images, and then they get blurred real fast. That by
Which
itself is pretty disturbing.
which may make it an image that would lend itself better to being a partial stack from a more head-on kind of position. But I don't want to second guess the guy's creativity. I mean, it is a striking shot. It's just a vague sense of imbalance that I get looking at it.
Yeah,
It could
and
just be
this
the black background, which kind
could
of
be.
emphasizes it.
Yeah, it's really impossible for me to know what goes on inside anybody else's head when looking at an image. I
True.
have the greatest of difficulty and usually fail, even knowing what's going on inside my own head. Sometimes it's not until I try to talk about what I think I'm seeing that I think I understand it. And then I worry that I'm paying too much attention to my own words and not enough to the images in front of me.
Yep, I hear you.
As I look at this just now, as we're having this conversation, you're talking about the composition, and I'm thinking about uh, the technical characteristics of the stereo. And in that regard, I can see one tiny clear glitch, and that is over on the right-hand side of the image.
Hmm.
I'm going to click that button again. I won't be able to zoom in to show this. And I'm going to put this back to normal scale. We've got this gray line that marks the edge of the frame.
Hmm.
And in stereo, the uh, the leg is in front of that gray line.
Correct. And the foot is behind it.
Well, the foot is invisible,
Well,
but
yeah,
but if the foot were physically present as an extension of what we see here, then it should be visible because it's in front of the edge of the window.
Right.
That's what makes it a window violation, is that something is cut off when, according to the depth that we see, it should not be.
Right. So it's more an optical illusion than a true uh, discrepancy in depth. Is that foreground transparency in the fibula of that or
This little
tibia?
glitch here or
No,
down
below
here.
the band right there. Yeah,
Yeah, that looks like some form of foreground transparency. Yeah, definitely in stereo, in this area, I can see white hairs
yeah,
from the back leg. And this area here is definitely, that looks like a DMAP artifact.
sure do.
So this is a case where if I saw this problem, and it's small enough that I might very well not have seen it if I were preparing this image. But if I did see it, then I would probably do a stack selected
Hmm.
of just this portion of the stack,
Right.
uh, this depth portion, which I have no way to show with my cursor, and um, and then I would retouch that into both the left and right images.
Got it. It
Retouching stack selected into left and right is usually pretty easy and successful. That's the only retouching I'm much willing to do with stereo.
I think it's a very striking stereo image. I mean, I think it's very successful in that regard, and this artifact is negligible. The foot does bother me. It bothered me when you first showed the picture because it looked that like there was something off, like it was cut off at trying to get in the door. But
And I
very
think
trivial.
uh, if it looks that way to you in mono, then it's a composition error. If it looks that way because of the depth in stereo, then it's a window violation error.
It's both. It's part of the imbalance in looking at it in mono, and then in stereo, it's clearly funky looking as well. So I think that's probably one of the things that was tipping me off. Also, the angle of the foot on the right appendage, right fore appendage, is too cocked back to be believable. They don't walk like that.
Ah, yeah,
In
and
the most supportive and friendly way, I say that, of course.
well, shall we talk about this coloration of the eye?
Yeah, that looks a bit on the post-mortem side, does
It,
it
it
not?
is. I mean, this is clearly a dead beetle.
Yeah.
Um, and not only for the lack of movement.
It's one of those things that I think is really close to being a successful and attention grabbing picture that just misses it by a couple of very, very small, trivial things that my AI would be glad to describe to you in much detail.
Yeah, that could be. For me, the reason this thing is in the first half and not the second half is because when I break stereo and go mono,
Hmm.
I get no nasty sense of loss.
Right.
Yes, I certainly lose presence, but partly because it is such a good picture in mono, and partly because I am already familiar with the anatomy of this beast.
Hmm.
Um, I
So
don't
it's not
feel
adding anything to you.
the stereo is not telling me anything new.
Okay.
It's just giving me a better sense of being present in the 3D space.
And whose picture was this again?
This was by Antonin Brocard.
Very nice, Antonin. Very nice indeed. Bring more pictures to the competition. Would
Yes.
like to see more of this.
So we have moved on here to Strawberry Flower by Pierre Seurat. And here, my first reaction actually was, in a sense, compositional because it seems underexposed. Um,
A
the
little.
strawberry flowers that I know about have white petals, and there's really nothing in here that's white. I didn't pull it into Photoshop to look at the histogram, but I would guess that there's pretty wide pedestal on the right-hand side with no pixel values in it. And then when I lock it up in stereo, which I just did, there's seems to be something weird going on uh, with this lower left pedal. And at first notice, I couldn't really tell what that was. So I said, okay, well, let me just go in and look at this stuff in the middle that has more obvious structure. And what's going on in here is that there's a lot of DMAP artifacts that are really interfering with the stereo. They
Yeah,
introduce things that just aren't there structurally.
especially in those anthers at the top there with
Yep,
holes in them. Yeah.
yep.
That's weird, those holes. What's causing them? That's not something I'm familiar
Those are
with
D, those
seeing.
are those are DMAP errors. They happen when you leave the contrast threshold setting too low.
Okay.
Um, and so this is an area where it just ended up the depth map ended up staying kind of sort of stuck to the white pedal, or it came totally loose from everything and ended up getting pixels from the white pedal instead of pixels from the
You
standard
know, it
shaft the way it should have.
it looks very classic for a DMAP artifact without stereo, but with stereo, it largely or partially occludes those holes. It gets less apparent.
I see what you mean.
It's interesting.
Uh, yeah. Having two eyes together, trying desperately to impose 3D structure on the two
Hmm.
images. Um, yeah, they do introduce some interesting effects. So I'm pretty comfortable with the idea that this is a true stereo, two stacks, both DMAP. And if we go back here to this lower left pedal and we break stereo, so we're now looking at it in mono,
Hmm.
we notice that in the center image here, the front of this is very smoothly done.
Right.
And over here, it's different. Yeah, and the end of this leaf seems to reach its end at different places. So I think we had two stacks uh, that maybe neither one of them actually captured this bottom left pedal all the way to its front in focus.
Hmm.
And in any event, DMAP has treated them very differently. Other places in the image,
Is that a
like
hitchhiker at the bottom?
a hitchhiker at the bottom,
A
you need to
photo bombing ant.
you need to guide me. Like
Uh,
right here,
yep. No, it's not. What a weird artifact. Out of stereo, it looks like an ant. It really does. Because it's only in that middle picture. Looks like the abdomen and head of an ant from behind.
ironically, I was in the stereo when I zoomed in on it, asking if that was what you meant. For me, it kind of looks like something at about the level of the stamen, even in stereo. But it's totally absent. So that could not be a DMAP artifact because there would be nothing or no place to get the white. That it's
Mhm.
got to be a specular reflection that appears in one image and not the other, in one stack and not the other. Anyway, yeah, strawberry flower. Good idea. I would say probably a good first attempt. Some opportunities for improvement.
What might you have done differently on this one, Rick? If you were charged with photographing it, what could have saved this one?
Deeper stacks that would have captured everything in focus in
Hmm.
both views. Much more careful treatment of the DMAP contrast threshold to prevent these sorts of DMAP artifacts. And it could be that this is such a complicated geometry that DMAP just could not do it at all, in which case consider backing off and just doing a PMAX
D-Max.
and living with the increased noise and increased transparency that you'd be getting from that. Of course, um, you wouldn't have any trouble with horizontal streaking because would not be synthetic stereo; it would be real stereo.
Hmm. Well, that's good advice. It does look challenging. This is a small enough flower, is it not, that he probably was able to shoot this on a rail? And if not, would that have anything to do with the way some of these artifacts have appeared? If this was shot on a rail when it should have been done by hand, hand focusing, I mean, with the lens.
Oh, you mean moving the camera and lens as a unit on a rail?
Yeah.
I think this is in a size range where it doesn't much matter how you do your focus stepping.
Okay, good. Good to know. It's right in the middle.
Yeah, I had occasion recently to do a controlled study of that for some work on photomicrography.net, and for the case that I was looking at, there was like a 0.02% difference between the two situations. It really just didn't matter.
Really? Okay. What size object were you looking at to get those results?
That was at about 1 to 2 magnification on APS-C.
Okay,
How much difference you get between the methods of focusing depends a lot on details of the lenses that you never see published.
sure.
Um, there can be a factor of 4 difference in sensitivity to artifacts caused by moving the lens, depending on whether you're using, say, enlarging lens on bellows versus using my one of my favorite macro lenses, which is a uh,
100?
Yeah, it's 100 millimeter, but it's the IS-USM. And the reason I make that point is that the internal optics of that thing are such that when you're at 1 to 1 magnification, the entrance pupil of the lens has actually moved back to 300 millimeters away from your subject.
Oh, wow.
So it is as if you're getting the magnification of being close, but the geometry, the perspective, the point of view of being a third of a meter back.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
That's not a lens I'm familiar with. Of course, I wouldn't be. I don't have one of those cameras. So who this was Pierre Sorose,
Pierre Sirot.
strawberry
Yes.
flower.
Strawberry flower.
Nice go at it, Pierre.
Very nice. Again, it works much better as a mono image than it happened to work out in stereo.
Agreed.
Moving on, we have 2 more to do in this first half grouping.
I love this.
And I see time is flying by faster than I had thought it might, but gosh, what a surprise.
There you go. This is beautiful.
Yeah, so this is this one probably I spent more time thinking about than any other image in the set. Um, in large part for technical reasons, trying to figure out how things have gotten to look the way they do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that it is synthetic stereo because of things like the asymmetric halo. We see halo on this side of this
Yeah.
lower left trumpet, but on the matching image, it appears on the other side of the trumpet. And there are similar instances of that at other places.
I would not have noticed that.
It's very if it is synthetic stereo, and I'm not totally sure about that, but like 90% confident, um, it's very well done. It missed foreground focus at a couple of places that were a little bit buzz killing.
Whose is this picture?
This is by Dan Stanifer.
Oh, great.
Yep,
Yeah, that
blaring
front edge
trumpets.
is a bit blurred out, isn't it?
Yeah, it
Shame.
never made it in focus. It's also flat because everything we see here is coming from a single image. And that's another strong clue that it's synthetic because if it were true stereo, then even if it was blurred, it would still have the disparity associated with the foreground background that causes the proper depth.
How come there's a part of the background on the left of the bit of lichen that looks like two hands? Immediately behind that, there's a patch that's out of focus, but the corresponding area on the right is in focus. It looks like it should be in focus too. You've got to zoom out a little bit further. and look to the left, even further to the left of the thing that looks like two hands sticking up in the air.
Oh, that thing.
Yeah,
Two
yeah.
hands sticking. I would have referred to that as
It's clearly
a
two hands
tower.
sticking up in the air like that.
Got it. I got it. Got it.
It's catching a baseball. But if you look on the left, that orange bit of background appears to be at about the same level as the stuff that's starting to come into focus on the right. It,
Yeah.
it's
And that
obviously not, but
and that's one of the things that caused me to scratch my head and wonder how exactly this thing was produced. There's an even more dramatic example right above that.
sure is. Yeah.
And this is the sort of thing that you would expect to see if it was true stereo. So you had two totally different stacks, and one of them happened to end at a different point from the other. But
Right.
putting everything together, I like I say, I'm like 90% confident that this thing is synthetic stereo. And if it is synthetic, then I have no explanation for how that thing got to be like that, unless it's a DMAP artifact. And we're seeing different ways that the depth map handled out of focus background in the two renderings.
Interesting. It's it looks like there's quite a big shift if this is either, well, whatever kind of stereo it is, the numbers were quite high. Does it not look quite rotated to you? That look at the at the bottom right left hand side of the hands thing. There's an orangey dot on the front edge and a green dot on the back. That yeah, uh, no, that one to the left of that that appear to get much further apart between the two photographs. Or maybe that's
Hmm.
just
It does have a lot of stereo disparity. It's probably at the edge of what most people would find doable.
you don't have any problem fusing it up though when
No, I'm okay with it.
okay. I love
But
it. I love
then I always warn my ophthalmologist because I confuse almost anything.
See, with the glasses on, that one that you're hovering your hand over now, that cup there looks really, really deep. Like not deep as in depth, far back. It looks,
Foreground to background.
yeah, yeah, it looks like a very long stretch. But
Yeah.
without the glasses, it looks like it's almost flat.
And there is a difference in this case between viewing with glasses and viewing with crossed eye.
Oh,
I noticed that viewing with glasses, that thing looks deeper than it does when I cross and look at the other pair.
look at
So
that white blob at the base of the arms that is almost invisible in the left views. Why is it so much bigger?
it's because of the stereo shift. I think we're looking at a single stack shot with a wide aperture, which gives a lot of opportunity to see behind things.
Okay.
And notice that in this image, we've got this large halo area. So I'm in mono now. I'm looking at this area, and I'm seeing that that's all contaminated.
Yeah.
And so my thought is that if if the stack were rendered with zero shift, that this structure would actually be over here, would be covering up about half of what we see as this background light colored gelatinous thing.
Okay. And
So in this view, the foreground, I'll call it a trumpet, has moved left, exposing a lot of background that's quite contaminated because a lot of it was hidden behind the trumpet.
right.
But
Got it.
over here, the trumpet has moved right, and so now it's covering up all of that area that was contaminated, exposing contaminated area on the left.
So this is just a case of you've got so much separation between the foreground element and the midground element that it's creating this larger than expected shift.
Yes, I believe that's correct. I look at enough stereo that has been arguably shifted too much
Uh-huh.
that that I don't find this to be unexpected.
Oh,
It's
okay,
just
okay.
at the edge. This is definitely at the edge of what would be acceptable, and the fact that I'm seeing not so much depth in the cross dive version. Looking again at this place you focused my attention on this thing.
Hmm.
Uh, the cross dive version looks pretty reasonable, and the parallel version with glasses looks extended.
Yeah, very extended
So
to me.
this may be a case um, where Dan chose his shift by viewing cross-eyed, and ended up with a shift that was a little bit too much for those viewing parallel,
Interesting.
um, or something else. And by something else, I mean something else I haven't thought of yet. There's a lot of variation from one individual to another about how much stereo separation they prefer and how much they can tolerate.
Right.
Uh, so it could be that he just happened to like more.
Got it. Well, I like it. It's a good picture. It's very pulls you in, and we talked about it for a long time, so I
We
guess we
have,
liked
and
it too.
yes, I spent a lot of time. This is one of these images that you can zoom in and
By the way, when you zoom out and stereo, that no longer looks like a blob. It looks like a flat leaf. That was very odd to see that pale thing that we were talking about earlier. When you zoomed way out and looked with the glasses, it flattens out like a leaf, stretching
yeah,
back into the
I don't
shadows.
know what it is. It could be just a rock or something like that.
It is odd though that shapes shift as much as they do when I'm looking at stereo. Makes me wonder which version is accurate. Blaring trumpets.
Yep. So then moving on, we have Picket Solid by Amy Furman.
Oh, nice.
It is
Banjo
a,
picks.
it is a very attractive image. I do not play any stringed instrument, and I did not originally recognize these as being any sort of pick. But since it says on it, pro pick, of course I did a web search,
Pro
found some
pick
images.
pinky. Yep.
Yes, and found
That's a
out what
thumb pick in the back and two finger picks in the front.
I have learned something useful today.
Yeah, you need these to play a
And a
banjo
bunch
because the
and a bunch
strings are
of
so harsh.
okay. I did not know that either.
Yeah, the thumb pick slides on so that the flat part is extending from the underside of your thumb so you can strike down on the string, and the fingers are for plucking.
Got it. Got it. And I believe the website of these things made a point that they were constructed the way they are so that you can feel the strings as well as plucking them.
Yep.
Have you locked this up in stereo?
I'm not seeing a compelling stereo. I mean,
It's very shallow. Yeah. There's this is I'm pretty confident two shot true stereo. But there's just not much separation between them. And so
when I
the
take the
stereo to
glasses
me
off, it
looks
looks
very little
flat.
different than go again.
When I take the glasses off, it looks very much just as compelling as a three-dimensional arrangement.
Yep.
If I look at the holes in the top of the pick, they hardly shift at all against that edge. In fact, they don't seem to shift at all. You see the little holes in the back of the finger pick at the top? Yeah, they just don't seem to shift from left to right.
I don't know if I can do the swap sides button or not. I suspect that's too far. No, it works. Okay, so there, perhaps I can convince you that they really do
Yep,
shift.
they do. They do. Yep.
From a technology of the photographic process standpoint, um, the thing I notice here is transparent foreground on the crossings between the metal and the whatever that is white material
Yep.
in the background, and also between the edge of the hole and what should be solid metal in front of it. We can see that a little bit more clearly. So this is a very successful image. It's just there's not really much added value from the stereo.
It's a really clever topic, and I like the understated kind of way it's composed. It looks like they were just tossed down on the table. I like it. It's a clever photograph, just not super stereo.
Yeah, which is again why we have the first half, and we are now moving on to the second half.
Well done, Amy.
Well done, Amy.
Ah,
We are now seeing the group that we're calling honorable mentions, and again, these are in Excel randomized order.
true random order.
True random. Well, depending on who you listen to, there are those who say you can only generate truly random numbers by exploiting some quantum phenomenon.
Which we just don't have time to do tonight.
Indeed. This is labeled Stick Star by Matthew von Kleindorfer. Stick Star. It is
Stick star.
clearly a beetle of some sort that I'm not familiar with
Nope.
very hairy exoskeleton, including the thorax and elytra,
Mm-hmm.
and sitting on a stem of some sort that appears to have a
Atkin, maybe.
bunch of trichomes. If we start zooming in on this thing, we see more and more detail as we would expect, and we get clear 3D structure. If I break mono at this level, then I feel like the stereo is adding a sense of presence, but it's not giving me any extra information really. If I go into this level, then the situation changes. At this level, it's very difficult for me to make sense of this boundary area in mono. But when I lock it up in stereo, it's crystal clear. Oh,
Yep.
looking at the edge of a stem, a bunch of these trichomes sticking up, beetle
Yep.
behind it, legs in front. And oh,
Very-
by the way, over here, there's one trichome that has come loose.
Oh,
It is sticking on the end of the tibia.
yeah, you just don't get that in mono. It just
Mono, yeah,
there,
you
but
can't tell. It would never occur to me in mono that that thing had come off the plant and was stuck on the beetle.
I'm zooming in on hairy beetles with patterns like that on their back. I think I'm going to have it in just a moment here. It's looking like a Phyllobianus or some sort.
Are we allowed to say that on YouTube?
I think we are because of the phyllo part.
Oh, okay.
It's probably rude for me to read a book while we're doing this. So that the tip of that antenna is a bit disconcerting. Is it in front or behind the appendage?
It is at essentially the same depth.
That's why.
They basically butt into each other right here.
Yeah, a lot of very nice detail.
A lot of nice detail indeed. And of course, thinking about how this thing was made, looking for clues about true stereo versus synthetic stereo, and I'm not finding a lot of absolutely clear-cut evidence. I mean, when I look at the eye in stereo,
That's
I
cardboard.
I see some effects that look like they might be cardboarding, but break break stereo, go to mono, and
Yeah,
there's still kind of a funny appearance to the eye.
there is like it's
So I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm pretty convinced that this probably is synthetic, mainly because in places I see some doubling of features that I would not expect to see if it was true stereo. It's hard for me to find any good examples quickly here. But anyway, if this is not synthetic stereo, then Matthew, please drop me an email and let me know for sure how this thing was shot.
and what it is.
Yes, and what it is. Yeah, if you happen to know that.
You know, there's a lot of different beetles in the world.
I've heard that. I have heard that.
It looks like an alligator weed flea beetle.
Yep.
It's not hairy enough though.
Yeah. So this thing is very attractive at full frame. It has lots of detail and some additional structure that I get from stereo, but only when I'm zoomed in. I'm out at this level. I guess partly because it's a subject I know about. Um, I I get from the stereo an added sense of presence, but no extra information about the structure.
A lot of it
Uh,
extra information about the substrate it's on, though. For me, anyway, it doesn't look anything like it does in stereo up close with those.
yeah, getting in close like this and then locking up the stereo, it gives
Yeah,
a much more clear understanding of what those trichomes are about.
yeah, and the things hanging off the bottom, the resin or whatever it is. Yeah,
Whatever
I
that
mean,
is.
that is that's what I would call a very successful stereo because I would not have thought to even look for any of that
I would agree, and that's why
in the top half.
it's in the top half,
There you go.
and we don't know exactly where it is in the top half, except at this point it's not
Because
in the
it's
top
random.
five.
Got it.
Yep. Okay, moving on. We have Plush Petal Pillow, again by Matthew von Kleindorfer, and again I emphasize this is random order. Those
Right.
those two just happen to come out together.
And this time there really is an aphid hiding in the back of this picture. So just going on record.
We speak of this guy,
He's got trumpets on his bottom, so it's definitely an aphid.
yes, and it's very small and it's very shallow, and nonetheless,
It's
we get an
stereo.
honest sense of 3D in stereo. Yes.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And
really strong
even the
evidence that
plant cells under his feet
really,
look 3D.
yep, really strong
Bravo.
evidence that this is true stereo. The level of detail in this image is uh, is impressive. This is a bee, yes.
Yeah.
Bees have hairs, yes. Many bees have
Yes.
barbed hairs, and
Look
we
at that
have barbs
pollen.
all over the place.
This is why you should never wet a bee if you're trying to clean it to photograph it.
Ah, yes, indeed.
You'll never get those hairs
If
apart again.
those ever get matted, they will never come apart again. Only the bee could do that.
Yep, and
And if
it
the
took
bee
him
was
all
going to
day
do it,
long.
you wouldn't have gotten him wet.
Yep, exactly. This is a gorgeous bee. What is it? Some kind of a
I
mason
do
or
not
a
know.
carpenter?
I do not know. What I do know is that this eye looks incredibly alive.
It does.
And the aphid also looked incredibly alive. So I think this is a live sleeping bee lying in a flower.
There's real depth in that eye. I mean, seeing through the surface of it.
Indeed.
That is amazing. What's going on with the near side of the simple eyes? It looks like the one closest to us has got some kind of an odd artifact, like it's missing, it's hollow there. The
It
other two eyes look quite prominent. Oh, they're not there isn't another eye near us. It's on the other side. I see it now.
Yeah, this is the center one. You can see a
Yeah.
trace of the far side one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is a reflection of something in the environment, shining off a fairly shiny spot of
Got it.
cuticle.
Got it. Okay. That looked like a missing eyeball, but
I had exactly the same problem. Yeah, it looks like something different from what I think it actually is.
gosh, look at the
Reflect
petal on the right. My goodness.
the level of detail.
Yeah, the just the succulence of it and the way that foreground petal just it looks very natural, covering the inner part of the flower.
It
Lovely.
sure does.
And going back out to mono, it loses all of that. Absolutely flat by comparison.
I would be interested to know the conditions under which this thing was shot. Um, I can only suspect maybe a cool morning or something like that, but man, if there's any artificial way of causing this sort of condition to exist, I would like to know about it.
I'm tipped off by the name Plush Petal Pillow. I think you're right that it is a sleeping critter.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. And, I confess, I'm not much of a morning person, so I don't see a whole lot of sleeping insects. It is very nice. It is very nice as a mono. The stereo adds for me a lot of sense of presence, but here at full frame, um, it's not telling me anything I don't immediately get from the um, from the mono view. When we zoom in, it surely does. I mean,
Yeah,
in at this level,
yeah.
oh yeah, okay, I see structure that I don't see in the mono.
But you don't have to see a difference at every magnification, just so long as there's something in there that's surprising or delighting at some level of zoom, right?
If you're asking about my judging criteria,
Yeah,
none of this is really a binary go no go sort of thing.
right.
It's more like an extra points for sort of thing. So
Fair
there are a lot of extra points for showing me structure that I cannot see at in mono, and the more different levels at which that occurs, the better.
enough. Okay. I love this. It's got all kinds of nodules on its body that I'm not sure I've ever seen before on a bee. I think they might be knees, but
Yes, that I believe is one of the bee's knees that people talk about.
is it really?
I have never understood that phrase. It's the
Right.
bee's knees.
That is
Oh,
the bee's knees, right?
well, yeah, this is the bee's knees, but I can't quite figure out why that would be a much desired state of being.
Nope, nope.
It is an interesting structure, though. So the structure here is so interesting that I'd almost like to see it without all the hair, just so that I can see how everything is articulated.
It is very bizarre. I cannot imagine what the structure is underneath it or why it would have that big exposed kneecap. But it looks very much like a plate in this projection. I love this picture. I'm not exactly sure where the softness is coming from, the slight fuzziness.
Light
Just the
fuzziness.
softness as you go in, look around the hairs, the flower underneath his legs there. It just everything kind of fades off to a pleasant softness in the background.
I will wager that when I zoom in, we see grains of pollen. Let's see.
You generally don't waver that much unless you've already looked at it. So I see grains of pollen. So you're right.
Yeah, the perception of softness, I believe, is caused by the fact that most of the detail is fine scale.
Yeah,
And so when we look at it at this level,
it's
it
really
averages
not.
out.
Yeah, it's really not soft. Beautiful. I'm just jealous, is all it is.
There you go. Yeah, lovely image. So,
Beautiful.
Matthew, well done on this one as well.
Well done. Yes, sir.
Again, moving on in this group in random order, we have what is titled Flux Capacitor Array by Stuart Turley.
Holy mackerel.
Now, my understanding is that a flux capacitor is a science fiction component used in the Back to the Future movie series.
It's
And
not,
so,
it's a
I,
component in the turbo encabulator, I believe.
yes, that is in more detail, agrees with my understanding. What it actually is in front of the camera, goodness gracious, that's a good question. I do not know. If we zoom in,
It's straws. It's drinking straws, the flexible part thereof.
I expect you're right. Um, My note says, I do not know what these things are in real life. Something like translucent flexible straws, perhaps. But having said that, I have never actually looked at transparent flexible straws at this level of detail, so I don't know. This could be some other sort of flexible tubing, something to do
It's
with,
under polarized light. This is birefringent soft plastic straws that have been yanked out to where their corrugations are stretched, and that would get the color in them from the stress.
and why are they different colors from one straw to another?
Because they're
I
at
think
different depths, maybe.
Maybe, or maybe it was a box full of straws of different color.
Could be
I,
different colored straws. Yep.
I, I really don't know. Stuart would have to tell us about this one.
It's intriguing. I love it. It's very clever.
It is certainly very clever, and it is visually attractive, and we are able to be confident, at least, of some structure that just totally disappears in mono.
It's disconcertingly flat in mono. Oh,
Yeah, you see an edge along
yeah.
here that's clearly serrated, but in mono, I can't tell
Yep.
whether the
It looks like a shared edge
I,
between those two
I figure
areas.
one of them must be in front, but I can't tell for sure which.
Yep.
And then in stereo, it's totally obvious.
And this was Stuart's.
Stuart Turley, yep.
Okay, we've
Flux
definitely got
capacitor
to
array.
ask him what this is.
True stereo. I strongly suspect due to absence of artifact and fact that some of this stuff appears to be out of focus while still having proper depth.
And that's how Stuart shoots.
And that's how Stuart shoots. But, I pretend that I don't see the name on these things when I'm
Right. It's hard to
trying to
do.
figure out what they are. Okay, and moving on to something totally different from flux capacitor arrays, we
Oh,
have one
wow.
titled Silent Hunter, the Dead Leaf Mantis by Leroy Harding.
Yikes.
Isn't this scary?
Yeah. Blimey.
I am not familiar with this type of mantis.
I don't particularly want to be.
Yeah, from a technical standpoint, I am confident that this is true stereo, and the most compelling reason for saying that is the absence of reflection, specular reflection in this eye that I'm hovering cursor over,
Hmm.
as compared to a very prominent, obvious reflection in the same location of the same eye in the other eye view.
How interesting.
So,
Why does our brain not see the specularity in the fused image?
because we are used to seeing that sort of thing all the time, anytime you look at uh, glassware next to a window,
Hmm.
your eyes are getting conflicting reports like this. And
True.
I think the make sense of it part of our brain just says, oh yeah, fine, shiny reflections, ignore that. The stereo disparity part of your brain, I think, doesn't know how to handle that
Hmm.
really. And so for me, things like that produce a very distinct sense of discord. Sometimes it manifests as almost a little bit of a flickering or flashing effect. But it's, wait a minute, one eye is seeing something that's not consistent with the other eye. What's
Hmm.
going on? Now, these eyes are very interesting. The mantises that I'm used to have eyes that are more or less a solid color, and they have a definite pseudopupil.
Hmm.
And the pseudopupil in mantis eye always faces the camera. I'm not seeing a pseudopupil in either eye.
I see one on the
Uh,
right.
well, we see a black blob up there, but it's not facing the camera. And that suggests to me that it is not the same thing that I normally think of as being a pseudopupil, which is the view of the light sensitive parts uh, of Ommatidia
Right.
seen from the Ommatidia's front. So I don't know what that is. I've never seen it before.
Could be
Uh,
injury or a defect,
yes, it's a
developmental,
something. It gets down to the question of, so I ask you, is this mantis alive or dead?
dead.
I don't know. What I do know about it is that I really can't tell. There's no trace of a motion artifact between these two.
Yeah.
There's nothing about this that tells me it's dead, except for the oddness about the eye. Right? This eye is such an odd thing that, yeah, I'm thinking that just doesn't look natural. But it could also be that this type of mantis is just really, really good at staying stock still while somebody shoots a side-by-side cha-cha true stereo of it, because
Nah,
that's clearly what this is.
I think it's dead.
All right. Well, if you get a definite ruling on that from the guy who took the picture, do be sure and let me know.
We'll
So
we'll ask
Leroy
for
Harding.
Leroy Harding. Yep. It is a very compelling picture, and the stereo is shockingly in your face. I love it.
Yes, the subject is very deep, and the stereo is sort of at the edge of what I think anybody can handle well.
This is a
Uh,
very clever way of shooting from below an insect like this. It gives it a majesty that just you can't get from shooting on at eye level. It does look like a monster
it does. This looks like the sort of critter that I really do not want to meet anytime.
anywhere. Me too. Leroy, you can keep this one.
Moving on, in the same group in random order, we have one called Flight of the Ladybug, again by Leroy Hart. Come on, this I swear it was a random number generator.
Yep,
It keeps putting pairs of people together.
it's
Ah,
what an
well,
interesting picture.
is this not an interesting picture? So this is, I'm quite comfortable, true stereo, and I can tell that because of the intense reflections at different places in the wings.
Hmm.
Uh, if we zoom in, then we get lots and lots of detail. We get, yeah, there's things get a little bit awkward over here with the overlapping legs, and there's a little bit of transparent foreground going on there, especially with the foreground leg. I probably would have done a stack selected and retouched that part. But from my standpoint, I'm a structure guy, right? The thing
Hmm.
that immediately attracted my attention about this piece is look at the structure of this scutellum.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. I don't think I've ever seen it from this.
I, my wife now has an outstanding instruction. The next time you find a dead ladybird beetle, bring it to me
Yeah,
because I want to check and see if other critters have this as well. I've never looked at one of these at this angle with the wings open. No idea whether this is typical, but it's so striking. It looks like the sort of thing that somebody building a model for a sci-fi film would do.
yep.
I mean, this is clearly some sort of an instrumentation turret on an assault vehicle of some sort.
You know what strikes me as the thing that makes me so glad I'm looking at this in stereo is look at the shell, the elytrum on the right as we look at it. It's transparent, but it's not foreground transparent. It's really transparent. And if you when you zoom in there, you can see through the rounded edge of it. It just looks so compellingly solid. Um, get in closer and look at that, the leading edge of the elytra down below
The
there, rounded off and transparent or translucent.
reading edge of the oh, okay, of the elytra. Here we are.
Yeah, yeah, right there.
So you're talking about right there. Okay. Yeah, I don't pick that up as transparency,
Translucence maybe is what I meant.
translucency.
As you go
Yeah.
up on the shell,
I get a much stronger impression of that up here.
right, right. I just think that that is a view of the ladybird's shell that I've never experienced before. I didn't realize they were rounded off like that. Lovely.
And I would not have guessed that they were that transparent.
Was it their spots look more like melanomas at this magnification?
They do. Not sure I needed that impression. I have to sleep after this.
Ah, it's a
Yeah,
tremendous photograph.
it's very, very well done. And the painted background, I extra kudos for that
Yeah,
because it's just the right amount of depth behind the beetle. Yeah, not too close, not too far.
agreed. And
Really
I
nicely
actually
done.
like the way the wings have been cropped out to leave this square. It's unusual and untraditional, but I like it.
I had not noticed that. But yes, I agree with you. That does work very
If you'd
well.
left all the wings in, the ladybird would have been a bit small in the image, I think. This is a nice, unusual balance, refreshing look at it.
And relating that back to technical stereo issues, there is nothing in this frame that is in front of the window. So no window violation.
Right, right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Absolutely. That's nice picture. And this was Leroy Harding as well.
This is Leroy Harding as well. Flight of the Ladybug.
Very impressive. And it doesn't have cordyceps growing out of its head.
It does not.
An
Yeah,
uncommon thing in ladybirds these days.
is it really?
No, uncommon not to see it.
I've not followed any of that at all. The ladybird beetles that I notice in my area are all perfectly healthy and running around finding aphids.
Love the picture. Very successful.
Yeah, so then moving on, we have one called Jules Vernish
Oh, wow.
by Bud Parrott. These are radiolaria skeletons,
Gosh.
seen at very high magnification through a microscope. This is a very clean image. Um, Quite sure, given the known size of these things and the corresponding magnification, this must be synthetic. Um, but there's really no artifacts that would indicate that one way or the
It
other
is
in here.
beautiful.
It's very clean.
Look at that glass. These things are made of glass, really, are they not?
They are.
And they look like it in 3D. My goodness, they look like little prisms or lenses, the round blobby parts.
Yes. And if you drop stereo, go mono,
All disappears.
all the depth disappears.
Yeah, great job, bud.
Some unexpected complexity in this one down at the bottom because you can see
Broken
the
edge.
the broken edge, but the multiple levels of broken edges.
Uh-huh.
There's
They're
another level behind it.
spheroids that are joined together and smashed at different levels.
Something like that. Yeah,
Very strange looking. It's just looking at the same thing from the top, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. I believe Bud told me he had ordered this slide from the UK. I think that was and that it was like 1 million years old or 100 years old, something like that. But it is stunning.
You mean that the slide was prepared?
Yeah, it's an antique.
It's an antique. Could very well have been prepared 100 years ago.
Yep.
Some of those guys were very, very good at cleaning specimens and laying them out and then
Mhm.
getting them mounted
And
in a
organizing
way
them
that,
with the tip of a
yeah,
probe. I love that one in the basket
that's
there.
an interesting structure. Now, I would bet heavily that the background of this thing has been cleaned up a lot in post processing,
Sure.
um, and there may have been um, small defects on the individual radial area that have been cleaned up as well. But there's certainly no way to tell that. Uh, it's just my knowledge of the way microscope images usually end up looking that says, that looks awfully clean.
Sure. Sure. And it's Bud Parrott. He knows how to clean things in Photoshop.
That is another level of consistency. Yes, indeed. But of course, I ignored that it was Bud Parrott who did
Of
this.
course, you didn't know that until later, but
Right. I'm very good at compartmentalizing things.
it doesn't really matter to me how the picture was captured or edited. It just looks incredibly complex and interesting in 3 dimensions, and considerably less so in two.
Well said.
Very strange animals, these.
Yes, the real animals look quite different from these skeletons because the gelatinous parts of the critter come sticking out through those various orifices and
Hmm.
make make rays sticking out basically straight from the center of the beast. Hence the term radiolarians.
Yeah. But you can see exactly how that would inform the anatomy of these things because they look like they'd be set up to make a starfish shaped spherical starfish.
Yep.
Very pretty. Great shot, Bud. I love that. That needs to
Okay.
be on the wall.
Moving on to the last of the second group in random order, we have the Unsubmerged Blu-ray Reader by Nick Barker.
Wow.
what's interesting to me about this one is that when I look at it in mono, I say, okay, it's a device. And when I look at it in stereo, I say, oh, it's a device with a lot of depth, a lot of structure to it, which I sort of wasn't expecting somehow, having spent no time on the inside of these devices.
I have, and I know that lens floats on those coils, but you can really see it in 3D. That is amazing.
Yeah, if we zoom in, especially on this bottom part, I think the support mechanism is relatively clear. You know, we've got these thin strands of stuff
Copper
coming
wire.
out, and then copper wire through which presumably we run currents to create magnetic fields that interface with these permanent magnets on the sides for fine positioning of the Blu-ray head. The bottom part of the image makes a lot more sense in that regard than the upper part of the image does because of artifacts in the depth uh, in the focus stacking. Uh, for example, notice that the grayish plastic head of this piece is obvious in the image on the left side and has basically disappeared in the image in the center.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, and you've got
Yeah.
a lot of splurgy type artifact running down from that.
Yep. Those are DMAP artifacts caused by uh, caused by the depth map really not being able to follow the extremely steep and localized foreground, background that we see in structures like this.
Interestingly, I didn't look at the two images at first. I didn't look at them. I saw none of that artifact with the glasses on. It just becomes kind of slightly irrelevant because I can see the parts that are missing in the center photograph when the glasses are on. It fills in all those gaps like the gray cap you're talking about. This is a very good stereo picture for me. It's very enjoyable to look at. That
It's
lens is
fun.
clever.
And the lens, we can clearly see in stereo, has a lot of drops of fluid on its back surface,
Hmm.
which I suppose goes along with the title, The Unsubmerged Blu-ray Reader. There must be a story. Um, Somehow or other, this thing got wet, and I'm guessing because it's not going to work in this condition, got taken out of service because it got wet,
I
and
don't
was
think
then
that's what it is.
sorry.
I don't think that's what it is. I think it looks like silvering that's peeling off. It doesn't look like water drops to me on the inside.
Okay, well, clearly the difficulties of visual interpretation. Uh, for me, it's water drops. Okay, we now move from the honorable mention category in random order into the strictly ranked ones.
I am
So,
excited because I don't know who's missing from the.
yes, we carefully hid that information from you.
Yeah, this is good
In
stuff.
fifth place, we have Salt Crystals by Tom Bagalski.
Nice.
Now, in mono, this is like, okay, fine. It looks like, uh, something a high school student in photography might have done. Black and white. Okay, good
No.
darkroom exercise. And then I lock it up in stereo. And okay, this has structure that I did not expect. It's
Yeah.
got these long, thin crystals in the background, and then these more cubical crystals in front of that. And all of the crystals, well, many of the crystals have little inclusions in them.
Bubbles, it looks like. Yeah.
Bubbles, yeah, probably bubbles.
That
Bubbles of,
is really surprising how deep that is. It was hard for me to form that, to fuse that up, even with the glasses until it clicked.
And of course, once it clicks, you'll probably find it hard to get it unclicked.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at the little flashes of birefringence down inside. Well, it's probably not birefringence, just the little flashes of color on the facets of the crystals your right and up a little bit. It's beautiful. Oh,
Oh, like right here.
right in
Yeah,
there,
the
right on
pink
that
and the
face.
blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I would speculate that those are probably prismatic colors. And these crystals in the background, the long, skinny ones,
Hmm.
make me wonder if this is actually a combination of a couple of different kinds of salts. Not an
Yeah.
expert in crystals by any means, but I've not had the impression that sodium chloride will crystallize in these uh, long extended forms.
No, but it doesn't take much artifact. I mean, it doesn't take much contaminant in a salt solution to give you a different crystalline structure.
Good point. Good point.
It's very alive looking,
It is
detail everywhere.
almost everywhere. There's one spot over here in this area where
Oh,
it
look
he
at that.
just missed getting foreground focus by a little bit.
Yeah, but that thing's sticking way up in your face, isn't it? That
What we can't tell. Um, I'm quite comfortable for a number of reasons saying that this is synthetic stereo. And so this thing could look flat because it's physically flat, or it could look flat because this is just the foreground frame. Can't tell.
compelling three-dimensional look there. It looks like you could climb on that thing.
Compelling and honest. That is true to physical reality.
Uh-huh.
3D structure all through this thing, and it's
Look at the pitting in those crystals above and below where you just were. Almost perfect circles in them.
oh, this one in the middle.
Yeah. Well, the one above that one looks like looking down on a car engine manifold.
Yes, very interesting. A lot of structure in here that I totally would not have expected.
No, and you just don't appreciate without the stereo. More color in there too at the back. Lovely picture.
I go back to original size and I look at it in mono, and I'm back to meh.
Yeah.
But I just locked it up in stereo again, and I'm laughing. So yeah, very nicely done.
Great
Salt
one, Tom.
Crystals by Tom Bogalski in fifth
Mm.
place. And now moving to fourth place, we have a thing titled Safari Pollen by Antonin Brocard. And this appears to be a dead snake fly covered with pollen, which at this scale is not compelling. When we lock it up, we see, yeah, it's a snake fly, but I know what snake flies look like, so that's not any particular surprise. But we can go farther in and farther in and farther in.
Wow.
Is this not the most incredible structure you've ever seen? Or at least in the top group.
Yeah, those wings are what a incredible detail. You can see the crenulations on the individual pollen grains. I'm dropping in and out of stereo on this. I think possibly I'm looking
Maybe in too close.
in too close. That is,
Lots of wonderful detail and unexpected structure. And the most unexpected structure for me occurred when I panned over to this region and saw through the membranes of the wings.
yeah, like a pane of glass,
Exactly.
and you lose that in mono.
Totally. I was just going to say, now I encourage you to drop stereo and go to mono because that just disappears.
Yeah,
Totally disappears.
it is crazy. never seen that before. Wow.
Now I'm quite confident in asserting that this is synthetic stereo because moving up onto the upper parts of the thorax, we get a rather extreme case of cardboarding. Now, you know
Is it?
that, yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Yep. Break stereo, look at the mono version,
Yep.
and,
Smooth as a
and
baby's bottom.
with fine texture.
Mhm. It's
But in
funny
this,
when I look at the stereo, it persists as a smooth surface until all of a sudden it starts to cardboard. It does,
interesting.
it's not that way immediately. It's smooth, and then the ridges appear and deepen.
Okay.
Very bizarre to look at.
Yeah, for me it's compellingly cardboarded in an instant.
No, I have to look at the leading edge, the dark part at the bottom, and find the first edge before I can look back and see the others. Otherwise, it
Oh,
looks smooth in stereo. That's very bizarre.
but again, looking in this close and saying, "Oh, look, cardboarding," is just kind of an educational exercise because
Yeah,
look how far we had to go in to see it.
yeah.
If we go over here on the eye, I'll wager that we can see the same thing. And no, I have not run this experiment, but look how obvious that is. The
Oh yeah,
eye,
gosh. It's in slices, yeah.
yeah, yeah, the whole eye is like one, two, three, four, maybe five focus slices.
Well, that is
And by the time we get out to this scale, all of that
it's gone.
all of that bogus structure disappears. Yeah. It's a case of, yep,
How
that's the way
how
synthetic
far
stereo
in are you
works.
zoomed when we see this artifact? I know you've looked at some of my photographs and seen the same thing at fairly high magnification. I mean, fairly high zooms. But do you ever see this in a an image at normal viewing size? The
Generally
cardboarding
not.
effect?
It's pretty unusual. Usually I see it only when I zoom in. But I love zooming in to stereos
Oh
whenever I
yeah.
can because there's so much more interesting detail to see.
Right, right,
You
right.
know, again, on this one at at full frame here, it's sort of like, okay, but when I zoom in, then it's like, okay. So lovely work.
What is that black thing up at the top?
This thing here,
No, to the right. Um, oh no, it was that thing. It looks like a teapot in stereo, and then yeah, it's the black thing at the top.
I don't
Oh
know. Could be some kind of debris. It could be a mite.
gosh, I lost the layout of the anatomy there. I think the transparency of the wings is it's a little off-putting as far as knowing where you are. I've never seen that
Yeah,
before.
it can be definitely challenging to keep track of this stuff. Um, if we're gonna play around with this sort of thing a whole bunch, then maybe you need to add a navigator function to the viewer.
Oh, thank goodness. It was another black thing that I was looking at. So it wasn't the thing that just disappeared from view. It's the thing that looks like a black teapot right there. Yeah. And I think it's something on the other side of the wing membrane it just struck me as very solid and shiny and odd, and I didn't know what it was.
It is very shiny and odd, and I think it's just a strange reflection off a very smooth, shiny part.
Okay.
But I don't know for sure.
This is a spectacular photograph.
It is lovely. I've had much fun zooming in and poking around with this thing. But there's more to come.
You mean this isn't it for the competition?
It is not. It is not. That was Safari Pollen by Antonin Brocard.
Another
And next,
great photograph, Antonin. Well done.
indeed. And now we move on to what the heck is that?
Piece of
Well,
stone.
yes, I guess we could look at the title of the submission,
I didn't. I didn't. I didn't.
which is looking through a 6 millimeter slab of mica by Thomas McCormick.
Oh, that'll tip you off.
The part about the 6 millimeter slab of mica,
Yeah, yeah, that gives you a strong hint as to what it is.
it does, and yet the mica that I'm used to dealing with is the stuff that has already been separated into thin flakes and used as an electrical insulator.
Right.
And so my expectation when somebody says slab of mica is that when I look at the image, I'm going to see something like maybe translucent layers. And I look at this in mono, and I can't tell anything about what I'm going to see in depth. And then I lock it up in depth, and I see that, oh, whoa, contrary to my expectations, this thing has a whole lot of structure
Oh, yeah.
at multiple depths. There's this this gray thing that runs through the middle and looks like just a funny shape in mono.
Hmm.
In stereo, resolves as
It's a
being
plate.
a yes, a slightly warped plane
Yeah.
passing more or less from front to back. And around it, there's almost a cellular structure of what I suppose are some sort of fracture lines, possibly with something
Fossil.
in it besides mica.
Looks like there are bodies suspended in there, like.
Absolutely. This upper corner looks almost organic.
Mhm. It is absolutely beautiful, and it's very much helped by the warmth of the colors too. It's a great palette to have something like this. Makes it look very mysterious.
I agree. If this were done in blues, then you could maybe sell it as looking through a block of ice,
Hmm.
but then it
It
would
would
be,
be,
pardon the pun, cold.
yeah, it would be a different kind of compelling. This is a very Hadian kind of feel to it.
Okay, I think of it as warm and comforting, but sure, we could go with Hadian.
That's another plate there at the bottom, isn't it? That we're seeing obliquely.
This one here.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, this is another one of these images where I cannot tell how this thing was shot.
No,
It could be a really nice synthetic stereo. It could be a true stereo. There's nothing in here that gives me any clear indication one way or another
it doesn't appear to be any artifact in it that I can
of any sort.
make out at all.
Yeah. Now it is true that complicated randomized structures like this make it harder to see artifacts.
Sure, good subject selection.
I could
The
probably sit here and wander around in this thing for half an
the
hour.
right image looks a lot sharper than the left's.
Isn't that interesting?
See that megaphone shaped thing in the middle there? Look at this.
Uh, so
Yeah,
I'm looking at this.
yes, that's what I'm looking at. Look at that on
Yeah.
the left, and the uh,
Yes,
it's just not nearly as distinct.
I agree.
So that makes
Uh,
you
I
think
might
probably
take that as evidence that it's true
true
stereo.
stereo. Does it look like it's actually ghosting a little bit on the left? No, probably not. That's just it appears to have lost the handle shaped thing completely.
This handle shaped thing.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And that would be strong evidence that it's a true stereo because I can't imagine any way that that could get lost in the synthetic process. No, not in the context of this overall structure.
Well, it's still striking and very interesting, something very different.
Yeah. But Thomas, if you would like to clarify for us exactly how this was shot, I would definitely be interested to hear. It's a beautiful piece of work.
Who was this?
This was by Thomas McCormick.
Thomas McCormick. Nice photograph, Thomas. Oh, it's even more compelling as you back off. It looks like you're looking through a wrecked roof of something down into a fire. Beautiful, beautiful.
Very nicely done.
I need to
Yes.
get me a piece of mica. Not that I could take a picture like this, but it would be fun to try. Beautiful.
So this is our third place image.
All right.
And moving up now to the second place image,
I'm on pins and needles on that.
we have
Oh,
Crystal Stairs by Julie Botts. Okay, in mono, I see only a bunch of chevron shapes. Nothing immediately suggests to me that this is going to have anything to do with stairs. And then I lock it up in stereo, and it is totally compelling. We got strong foreground up here on this blocky structure, and then stairs disappearing into the background all the way to this thing in far background, whatever that is. This thing here must be a little bit of light shining off a part of the structure in the back.
I was so wrong about this photograph when I saw it the first time. I saw this on Saturday, or a version of this, and I thought there was no way. I think this is bismuth.
I,
There is
I'm
no there is no way for crystals to form in this way. There's the crystals are square plates, and they should be stacked like an Aztec pyramid, but these things appear to be the opposite of that, the inverse of that, and can't get my head around how that could be.
I have no idea how these crystal structures form. I do know that if I search the internet for pictures of bismuth crystals, that I see a lot of stuff for sale that seems to have this same general geometry. And it is fascinating to me. I have no idea what any of it means, but the structure is both visually attractive and compellingly 3D in
Oh yeah,
stereo.
no
Br-
doubt.
break stereo and
Nothing.
go mono, and it's nothing. It's just a blob.
I think what threw me off was when I think Julie had two pictures of this crystal, and the other one was shot from a slightly. If you look at this now as if you're down in the bottom right hand corner, look at it in mono, and imagine you're looking up a stack of square crystals to the top left. It flips, it inverts, and looks like a stack of square crystals, which is what I've always thought bismuth was. But when I put the glasses on, it immediately sinks into the page, almost as if I was viewing it backwards.
But if I swap sides so that you are viewing it backwards,
Now it looks
then,
normal. That now it
yeah,
looks like I would have thought bismuth would look.
right. But notice this little thing up in the upper left corner. It's now sort of an orphan hovering in the space.
Yes, but everything else looks consistent with what I would expect that crystal to look like.
Understood. And
How
there,
strange.
this is a classic case of how swapping sides inverts the depth. And for most of the structure, there are no, that doesn't introduce any inconsistencies. You know, this thing here could be perfectly interpreted as a pit
Yep,
in a in an edge.
at the tip of a right angle bend
Yeah,
in a
makes
crystal.
perfect sense. Things get a little bit weird in here. There are some funny reflections, but I'm not sure that really goes away. But this thing up in the corner, that becomes an unexplainable orphan. when
Yep.
I swap the sides.
Yeah, I know. I get it. This is a conundrum. I mean, I think the part of the charm of this picture is I'm definitely seeing a compelling story in stereo, but I'm just not sure which story's true. But do you see what I'm saying about the plausibility of square crystals over
I
L-shaped
do.
crystals?
I do. Absolutely. The interpretation in which this small stuff in the middle is sticking out above all of this other stuff like a pyramid.
Hmm.
Um, that's completely plausible. And it would be, I think, completely consistent with the imagery, except for
It is
this
weird. Yeah.
that weird ghostly orphan up in the upper left corner.
Yeah. It's
And of
Julie.
course, the presumption that Julie had the crystal in hand and did the layout proper. And
Yeah, yeah. She showed it to me. So I mean, I definitely uh, uh, feel that this is my brain playing tricks on me, not Julie. That looks less probable and less believable than the other way around. But that's my bias. I'm used to looking at crystals that are shaped the other way. Anyway, very interesting. I'm gonna try to get Julie to bring that to the Pazoom on Saturday, and let me take another look at it and get my brain around it.
cool.
Great picture.
It is a very nice choice of subject and very well photographed.
Well done, Julie.
All this, yeah, lovely fine detail all over the place. True stereo, not synthetic, as evidenced by absence of any synthetic stereo artifact and a few inconsistent reflections.
Yeah.
Inconsistent in the sense of different between the two eye views.
How could you photograph a chunk of mineral like this and not get some weird reflections?
Exactly, yeah, that just wouldn't happen.
Absolutely beautiful. Great shot, Julie. Congratulations,
Yes,
second place, which
second
means there must be
place.
a
There,
winner
there,
lurking in
there
the
must be
wings.
another one, and what does that look like? That looks like this thing. Okay, question number one. What is this thing? And no fair reading the title.
I'm not.
I have no clue. What is the shape of this thing? I have
Okay.
no I have no clue.
I
It
have
actually
no clue what I'm looking at.
reminds me a little of those crystals that you claim have glorious 3D structure that turn out to be dead flat.
Yeah,
This
right.
one, however, if I
Drag
click,
that into the conversation. Is this
if,
a it's 2 points and a ridge between them dropping down into it's a crystal. No, what did you just do there?
I'm just doing swap sides. Look at break stereo and look at it in mono.
Okay.
The structure is so large scale that just making it rock makes clear that there's a couple of things that are either in front or in back and some kind of a ridge
Yep,
between
that
them.
dips down. That's what I see in stereo.
Yes. And when we lock it up in stereo, that's what I see also. So this guy is far forward.
Yep,
This guy is far forward.
yep.
I'm now thinking that this looks like, this looks like a couple of volcanoes
Yes, it does
seen
with
from
an
way.
arête in between them.
Mhm. And if we zoom in, we can see there's enormously fine detail everywhere.
And you can see through this material.
And you can see through some of it. And wait a minute. If that's a volcano, I can see the magma chamber.
Right?
There's this fuzzy thing clearly in the background.
Yep, that's deep.
It's deep. It's fuzzy, presumably because we're seeing sort of through privacy glass, if you will, um,
Yeah.
a transparent Ripley surface.
Hang on a second. This is a stem of something that we're looking at the underside of a leaf or a flower. Why are they connected though?
Because if we believe the title. This is cross-sectioned dried grape.
Of course it is.
My guess is cut a grape in half, let it dry out, and you get something like this. But I certainly would not have guessed that until I saw this image with the title attached.
Okay. I am none the wiser. I don't know what part of a grape looks like that. It would have taken me the rest of my life to not figure that out. Do you know where we are in the grape?
I do not.
Doesn't really make you want to eat a grape very much, does it?
Oh, it affects my taste for grapes not at all. I have a very prolific grapevine, which has a large
Right. Yeah.
crop this year, and I'm really looking forward to both eating those things and cutting a few open and letting them dry out to see if I see anything like this.
Definitely, you need to do that. What do you think these two things are that are sticking up? I'm just trying to reconcile that
I'm
strange.
I'm thinking this thing in the background is a seed, and this is
Of course it is.
the connection of the seed to whatever normally feeds
Seeds.
it.
Oh yeah, now all of a sudden I see it. So we're looking through the middle of the grape, right where he's chopped it through where the seeds are.
Yes, yes. My my guess, only a guess, is that at some point this surface was wet, was the pulp of the grape,
And it's just
and
dried,
is dried
retract.
out and shrunk.
Yeah.
And while it was doing that, we even got a few nice crystalline structures.
Hmm. What do you suppose that is actually?
I don't know. Standard response for something like this. But we can see the translucency.
Yeah,
Stuff,
it's quite
fine
compelling
scale
actually.
stuff visible right behind the surface.
Yeah. Whose picture was this?
Ah, this is Cross Section of a Dried Grape by Thomas McCormick
Well
again.
done, Thomas. You've had
I
quite the.
see he was also in third place.
That is impressive. This is a very Rik Littlefield winner, don't I think?
Well, of course, I did the judging, and but yes,
That's
this
it.
definitely meets all of my criteria.
It's
It is,
beautiful and interesting and a bit stumping, and you learn a lot from looking at it when you realize what it is.
yep,
And it
it
does
is
make you want to chop a grape up.
visually attractive even in mono. I mean, I can imagine printing this and sticking it on a wall.
Yeah,
Uh, and and yet in mono, I have no idea what the structure is. But in stereo, even at full frame, it locks up to produce large scale structure. And there's enough fine scale structure around that I can zoom in as far as I want and play around all day.
it is really beautiful. That does look more desiccated than the other parts too. That looks a little less translucent though. No, it doesn't. I'm going to have to dry a grape and see what part of it is we're looking at so I can get my bearings, which means I'll have to leave the bunker to do that, to go buy a grape.
Think of it as a temporary reprieve.
Yep. Yep. They don't sell them singly, do they?
Not that I know of. And I'm sorry to report that even though I have lots, if I send you any by UPS, they're probably not going to arrive in suitable condition to photograph.
Well, they might already be dried out, might save me some time.
Yes. So I always wonder how these images were generated.
Hmm.
Uh, this one, I've been very impressed that we've been zooming way in and seeing no trace of cardboarding. And so I might be inclined to think, oh, probably true stereo. But I notice a bit of asymmetric halo here. We've got halo on the center image and not on the other image. Likewise on the other peak. And perhaps the most compelling evidence that this is synthetic stereo is that there is in 3D a sort of darkened X.
Yep.
Right
Looking
here is
at it.
one stroke,
Yep.
And over here is the other stroke, and I would bet heavily that that's actually a little bit of dust on the sensor that was shifted left in one view and right in the other view, while simultaneously being shifted up or down by a little bit of drift of the subject within the frame. So I expect that if we were to see the full frame straight out of the stacking process, we might see some vertical streaks at top or bottom, which have been very nicely cropped off in this presentation. Fine presentation it is.
You know, when I look at it without the glasses, I can almost see these two dark spots as pits, and the ridge actually being a saddle of tissue between them. Have you tried swapping the sides?
I have, and it produces exactly the effect that you have described.
That looks more real to me. That suddenly looks like I would expect a grape to look like if it was dehydrated. See how the bottom of the pits is dry and crusty? That looks like a desiccated core of a grape. There's no ridge to explain.
I'm sitting here smiling.
Am I
You know,
missing the point
I
here?
don't want to disagree with you, but my expectation of what a dried grape looks like, surely not a phrase that has ever been said before. my my expectation of what a dried grape would look like doesn't have any trouble at all with a ridge with two peaks. It is true, however, that in this particular image, I don't think there's anything about the image itself that would compellingly argue which orientation is correct.
Not compellingly, but most assuredly, this looks more biologically consistent with the way I would imagine tissue of any type desiccating, contracting, forming bands that would foreshorten. And all of a sudden, those crystals now look like indentations. This is very interesting, and definitely need to find out if maybe this was swapped at birth. And see that transparent area that we were talking about no longer becomes a seed in the distance. It just becomes a bit of pigmented, roughened surface. It just looks more consistent.
And yet, for me, the fuzziness retains the 3D presence in front of the finely detailed surface.
It does. It does.
Which I can't explain if this is the correct orientation.
Yeah. No, it's an enigma wrapped in a conundrum. My vote says absolutely that's the correct orientation, is the down inside one.
Well, you can check with Thomas and see, and do report back.
I'm going to go buy a grape and do it myself. I wonder what you guys think. You've been listening to us think out loud for a couple of hours. Does that look like it's more compelling as an innie or an outie? Let me know. Look, thank you once again for an absolutely thoroughly enjoyable discussion, and look at some really cool photographs. I think our community learned more about stereo last time you were here than we could have hoped for, and this was even better. So thank you, Rik Littlefield, for coming on and supporting the channel and doing this great work. I know everybody's going to be thrilled to hear it.
You're very welcome. Again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to look at all of these images. I love stereo, and it's especially interesting to have an opportunity to talk with images with somebody who gets a different impression from them.
Oh, and always. Well, mark your calendar for 2 years from now, and we'll see you with another batch.
It's a deal.
All right. Thank you again, Rik. Have a good night.
Okay.
And thank
Good
you,
night.
everybody, for watching. See you next time.